Good morning, Bellarmine. Welcome students and faculty to our 2022 Martin Luther King Assembly, led by the Black Student Union here at Bellarmine. We'll begin with a prayer led by Ben Folks.
We begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. In every uncertainty is an opportunity, but in order to fully capitalize on opportunities, we must acknowledge and understand the moments and events that led up to where we are today. The history of African Americans in America is not one of pride nor gratifying retelling. Rather, it is a complex ebb and flow of setbacks and successes, both frequently retold and shamefully hidden away. Despite this unalterable past, we are perpetually placed in a moment of opportunity to shape the future placed before us. In becoming aware of our shared history, some may feel fear that the future won't be better, and are trapped in an inevitable recreation of the past. However, with every uncertainty comes an opportunity to improve. In every liminal moment, an opening for recovery. So today we ask God for the courage to remain hopeful in the face of despair and desperation. And we ask that they instill in us the effort to make changes and build a better reality for future generations. St. Robert Bellarmine, pray for us.
And now Kai Wersch will introduce our theme for today's assembly.
Hello, students and faculty. Today, we honor and commemorate the memory of Martin Luther King Jr. in order to preserve his legacy and pay him homage for his principles in which we all were raised to believe in. He encouraged us to never judge each other based on presentation alone, to never seek to do harm to one another in the false name of justice, and to challenge the status quo in order to actualize our dreams. Not only is he an inspiration to those of his generation, but to those of ours as well. Today, we memorialize a man who changed the way we interact with one another. In fulfillment of his vision, we seek to inspire our student body today with the story of his march to freedom. We challenge each of you to gain the perspective of the revolutionary instead of the orthodox, to move forward from this day spreading love and kinship, and periodically assessing yourself. In the last 6 weeks that have passed since Martin Luther's national holiday, what have you done to continue and to contribute to his legacy? Today, we challenge the leaders of tomorrow, that's you guys, not only to be socially conscious, but to seek to enact social change as well, and to lead by the example set by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Thank you. Now, please welcome Jamila Momo, who will be singing the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. Please stand.
Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let every sound loud as the rolling sea sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod. out in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with the steady beat have not a weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of a bright star is cast.
And now introducing our guest speaker, Dr. Myrtle Mitchell. And here is her granddaughter, Ava Mitchell.
Good morning, Bellarmine. My name is Ava Mitchell. I am a sophomore here and a part of BSU. When planning this assembly and challenged with finding a guest speaker, I couldn't think of anyone better than my grandmother, Dr. Myrtle Mitchell. She is very close and dear to my heart. I hope you all enjoyed this video and get a chance to learn and take away from this. Thank you.
Good morning to all the wonderful, smart, and exceptional Bellarmine students. Thank you, Ava, for inviting me to come and speak to your fellow classmates this morning. I'm truly honored for the opportunity to talk with you about a subject that has become a divisive and demoralizing blemish on our democracy, that of racism. Racism is a falsely constructed hierarchy of superiority and inferiority. The white race presumes that they are inherently superior and privileged, and that people of color are inherently inferior and unequal. The result is a culture of inequality and marginalization, prejudice, attitudes of superiority, inferiority, discrimination, and differential treatment based on skin color. Throughout my life, I have repeatedly encountered racism and prejudice. What I would like to share with you today are a few of those encounters. And I graduated from high school in the top of 10% of my class. I scored high enough on my SATs to receive recognition as a National Merit Scholar. I was awarded four four-year academic scholarships, one of which was at Seattle Pacific University, then called Seattle Pacific College. I decided to attend Seattle Pacific College because of its small campus atmosphere and its stated Christian values and principles. There were very few students of color attending the college, minuscule percentages. With racism and prejudice, attitudes toward me occurred as I registered for my first quarter. On registration day, I proceeded through the lines with excitement, anticipation. But those lines and all the stations were staffed by upper-class white students. I was often greeted with hostile stares. Never did I hear a student volunteer actually greet me or welcome me to the college, although I overheard "Welcome to Seattle Pacific" to students that were behind me. Demeaning words such as "you people" came forth from several students. By the time I arrived at the station to actually register for my classes and obtain my class schedule, I was frustrated and angry. I plopped down in front of a student volunteer counselor who seldom looked at me as he talked. He read from what he said was a pre-college profile. Still not looking at me, he said, "I see that you are weak in the sciences. You know, nursing requires your completing of a lot of science courses. I don't think you're up to that. These classes are going to be too demanding for you. I think you ought to consider another program, something not very demanding, that you would have a better chance, might have a better chance of completing." "No," I said with resolve. "I have scholarships that are specifically for nursing, and I've been admitted into that program. Also," I added, "if you had read my high school transcript, you would see that I got A's and B's in my science classes." After a few awkward moments, he grunted angrily, shoved the schedule of courses across the table, and looking past me said, "Next," to the student behind me. At the start of our junior year, my nursing classmates and I were transferred to the University of Washington School of Nursing to complete the clinical portion of our program. It was part of an articulation agreement between Seattle Pacific and the University of Washington. We were all assigned to the King County Harborview Medical Center, the county hospital that treated all kinds of low-income, low-class patients, along with 2 Jewish students and 1 middle-aged student. It was in this setting that I encountered racism and prejudice again. Out of the 320 nursing students in the combined University of Washington and Seattle Pacific College student nursing enrollments, my Jewish classmates and I were the only minority faces. I was the only brown face in a sea of white faces. While my fellow students from Seattle Pacific found it easy to strike up friendships with the University of Washington students, those students remained unfriendly and distant to me. Our first quarter consisted mainly of skills labs. Our second quarter, we were assigned patients in the hospital. In our third quarter, a new clinical instructor and lecturer was assigned to the Harborview nursing students. I was in her clinical group. She was stern, dismissive, and a poor lecturer. Almost immediately, she began to treat me differently from my fellow students. She tried to systematically fail me by lowering my grades and writing disparaging comments in red across my essays and reports, such as, "This is written at the 5th grade level, not the college level." She assigned me to the most difficult patients, some of who presented diagnoses and or care plans that were clearly above the expected skill level of a second quarter clinical nursing student. She was highly critical of the care I provided those students. She seldom came when I requested help or had questions. In the fourth quarter of the program, she called me in for a mid-quarter evaluation conference and informed me that I was performing at a low level and that she was prepared to give me a D grade. She also said, "I'm going to recommend that you not be allowed to continue in the nursing program. It's obvious that you are having a lot of difficulty keeping up with your classmates. I think you would be happier switching to perhaps a practical nurse course. It's a nice program, and students of your race do well and go on to make good, solid, licensed practical nurses." I was both shocked and crestfallen. After pointing out what I thought I had done well, I said, "My goal is to become a registered nurse, and I want to continue in the program. What do I have to do to raise my grade?" The instructor begrudgingly said that she would have to confer with the other two clinical instructors and get back with me. I was devastated, but my mother buoyed me up and urged me to keep on working and studying hard and pray. 2 weeks later, I met with the instructor along with the second instructor who had volunteered to be present at that conference. My instructor coughed and cleared her throat, said that after considerable discussion, her colleagues agreed that overall I was performing at a satisfactory academic level. The second instructor also pointed out that I was working part-time in the evenings, primarily as a practical nurse, and that the RNs had such confidence in the professional level of my work in patient care that they allowed me to take the role of charge nurse whenever they had to be off the floor temporarily. The instructor reluctantly and again begrudgingly changed my grade to a C. She told me privately later that she still thought that I should lead the program. I completed my nurse's training and graduated cum laude from the University of Washington and from Seattle Pacific College. I went on to earn a master's degree in public health nursing administration and a PhD in urban planning, policy, and administration. 20 years later, my encounter with racism during my nursing education, I met the same clinical instructor during a meeting with Swedish hospital nursing personnel to plan for clinical assignments for nursing students. I represented Seattle Central College and their 2-year nursing program. The participants were asked to introduce themselves. When it came for me to introduce myself, I sat up straight and said, "I am Dr. Myrtle Wood Mitchell, Executive Dean of Instruction at Seattle Central College." My former instructor looked up in surprise as she stared at me. After the meeting, I went up to her and said, "Do you remember me? Years ago, you tried to flunk me out of the UW nursing program, but I graduated with honors, and I became a registered nurse, and I went beyond." Overcoming the limiting, painful, demeaning effects of racism is not easy. The immense sense of less than, different from, and inferior to that is created to further diminish victims of racism is difficult to erase from the memories of those affected. Throughout my life and my professional career, I had to repeatedly reaffirm who I really was. Support from my family and friends and colleagues helped me to transcend and overcome the racist attitudes directed towards me and the barriers to my education and professional achievements. Later, constantly reminding myself that I am somebody helped me hurdle the roadblocks put in place by racism to achieve a successful, fulfilling, and dynamic career. On the topic of racism, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose birthday we celebrate this month, said, and I quote, "There is no easy way to create a world where men and women live together. But if such a world is created in our lifetime, it will be done by rejecting the racism, materialism, and violence that has characterized the Western civilization, and especially by working toward a world of brotherhood and sisterhood, cooperation, and peace," end quote. Bellarmine students, you are the next gifted and talented generation to confront all of the global and domestic, social, economic, political issues that we now face as a nation. I urge you to become leaders in movements and initiatives that fight the evil blight of racism with truth, courage, principle, and compassion. Let your lives model the behavior of equality, respect, and non-biased regard for the brown, the black, the olive, and the white faces that you encounter each day. I thank you for listening.
And now, Virginia will be presenting some spoken words in the form of an original poem written by her.
I'm going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for some. Those not included are the ones from their homeland they were taken from. 1619 marks the beginning of slavery. 300 years later would come the bravery of a man named Martin Luther King, who retaliated with love, with a message that resonated, which he claimed came from above. Anointed were his words received among the people. He achieved the impossible. He got through to their cerebral. A grayscale world in which black and white were once separated, we now live in color, no longer segregated. The reality we live in was once his dream. Free at last, or so it may seem to the ones with the privilege to not see beyond their means, while those with the pigment struggle to achieve the American dream. We continue his marathon. We continue the resistance with persistence against the oppression of our fellow brothers and sisters. The mothers of those innocently slain hear their cry. With our hands bound behind our backs, we lift our heads up to the sky. We press on for justice, for equality, for liberation, a fight that's lasted around 200 years in duration, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for some. You will never understand the life of those expected to succumb. This is only a scratch on the surface. The pain that runs deep, it fuels the purpose of the strive to finally be treated as God's beloved creation. The pain dates back to those who worked on the plantations. When the color of my skin is the causation for the pain that has passed through generations, I stop and wonder, why does it matter? As they serve the heads of those who look like me on a platter. On the news, in the media, the bias formed against us, held in place by those who control the narrative, these pretentious people in power who continue to hold us down, backed by a system of institutional racism, underlying prejudices found. Through everyday life, from school systems and workplaces to seemingly natural conversations, you may not be aware of the ramifications. Words have power, like the famous words of Dr. Martin Luther King, "From every mountainside, let freedom ring." As I conclude, I request one simple thing. With your hand over your chest, standing proud and tall, as you recite this pledge, make sure you contribute to the fight for liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
And now Virginia and Jamila will be performing Powerful.
We won't just stand in silence. Can't stop the
Michelle Kamau will lead us in reflection.
Now, I would like to take some time to reflect on all that we have heard today. We take this time to commemorate Dr. Martin Luther King and to remember his strong fight against racism. We urge you to continue this fight in your homes, in your community, and at Bellarmine. There's strength in both you and me. So when we come together as one, there's plenty of change that can happen. Our generation is an example of era of change, and it all starts when we collectively take a stand against racism. Dr. King was a big example of speaking up against racism no matter what consequences he would face afterwards. He was brave, courageous, and strong. Even when people tried to stop him, Dr. King did not let tension or anger of those who were against his message stop him from running the hard marathon. Listening to Dr. Myrtle Mitchell's story reminded me of Dr. King because they both didn't fold under pressure. Although they were both faced with painful and degrading effects of racism, they knew how to fight back. It was Mitchell's own determination and iron will to succeed, and the immense support from her family and friends that allowed her to accomplish her goals. She went beyond what others expected of her and rose above the demeaning racism she experienced during her time as a nursing student. She was able to use that hostility as a reason to work even harder as a nursing student. Later, she became the executive dean of instruction for the nursing program at Seattle Central College, later known now as Seattle Pacific University. Just like Dr. King, Dr. Mitchell didn't let other people's hatred of her skin stop her from achieving her dreams with her God-given talents. King once said in his letter from Birmingham jail, "I am not afraid of the word tension. I have earnestly opposed violent tension, but there's a type of constructive nonviolent tension which is necessary for growth." King wanted to create the kind of tension society that would rise from the dark depths of prejudice and racism to the majestic heights of understanding and brotherhood, leading to a better society and environment for generations to come. Today, we see the great impact his courage and bravery has on all people in America. His powerful words and statements still ring true today, all over the world. Even in a country created to survive off the backs of the marginalized and oppressed, Martin's words still hold the same power they held during his time. He reminds us that we must address racism in our own circles as well as out in the world. Moving forward from this assembly, I advise you to take a stand against racism and to make our school a better place. We all have a lot of growing and learning to do, and what better time to start than now? Thank you.
To conclude our assembly, take a moment to think about Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy. Dwell on Dr. Myrtle Mitchell's video, the beautiful yet firm poem presented by Virginia. And if there was something I'd advise for you to all take away from this, is to recognize Dr. King's determination. Even after being jailed many times for committing civil disobedience to change unjust laws, he still persevered through it all. You don't need to be in a position of power. You don't need to be fearless but willing to face fear. You don't need to be someone special in order to lead. It's not a surprise that Bellarmine isn't a perfect place, but we must all come together as a community and be a part of something bigger than ourselves. Thank you all for listening, and we appreciate those who spoke up here today and those in the audience. A special thank you to those dressed in black today, because it shows us that what we can do together when we unify. Thank you, all of you, for your support and your appreciation during this month of Black History.